The one question I get asked all the time by friends, family, and investors is, what's the next Palantir? What stock could explode like that? So I wanted to make this video to answer that question and share the story behind Palantir's incredible 10x run in just over a year. I was lucky enough to catch a couple of these amazing winners myself, be it Palantir, Robinhood, or Coinbase. No, I won't lie. A big part of catching these hits is luck. Oftentimes, big investors do not really talk about how much luck plays a critical role in getting these huge home runs. The right investment at the right time with the right story. Robinhood rode the crypto wave. Palantir rode the AI wave. But it's not just luck. We can also study the numbers, the story behind the stock, the fundamentals to improve our chances. Today, I want to take you through Palantir's growth story. We are going to study it like a playbook. Because if we can understand how a stock like this went from being beaten down and hated to being the darling of Wall Street, then maybe, just maybe, we can catch the next one before it explodes. And no complicated financial jargon. Let's just keep this very simple, straightforward, and let's piece together clues like a detective story. And if you're excited about this video, please do hit that like button and subscribe for more interesting analysis like this. Now, do note that I'm not saying that Palantir is a great buy today. In fact, I sold my Palantir stock and I've made a video about it as well. I'll put the link in the description and also on the right here. Now with that, let's get started. So let's rewind a bit to 2020. Palantir IPOs, there's a ton of hype. The company's revenue is growing at over 40% a year, and everyone's excited. But things start to change fast. By 2021 and 2022, Palantir's revenue growth slowed down from the 40s down to the mid-teens. By Q4 of 2022, they were growing at just about 17.5%. That is still growth, but Wall Street, they're not impressed. I mean, you can find a number of companies growing in the mid-teens. It's not a big deal. And on top of that, Palantir was losing money every quarter, consistent net losses, and they were spending heavily. Plus, their contracts were mostly large government deals that took forever to close. Investors started to think, can this company ever scale? And then, of course, you had the broader tech sell-off in 2021 and 2022. The entire market turned against growth stocks. Palantir became just another speculative money loser in the eyes of Wall Street. The stock crashed from a peak market cap of over $40 billion down to just about $13.5 billion by the end of 2022. Imagine that, losing 2/3 of your market cap. But here's the part most people missed. Even though the stock looked terrible, the company wasn't dead. In fact, far from it. See, on the surface, it looked bad. Slowing growth, net losses, a falling stock. But if you dug deeper, there were clues. Clue number one, even though earnings were negative, Palantir was free cash flow positive. In 2022, they generated about $183 million in free cash flow, and the gross margin were a massive 78%. Just to simplify, what a gross margin means is that for every dollar that Palantir is earning, they get nearly 80 cents after covering the direct costs. Companies with a margin like that have the room to become very profitable once they get their spending under control. The next clue is valuation reset. When Palantir IPO'd, its price to sales ratio was about 37. By the time the stock bottomed, that ratio had collapsed to just 7. Same company, same business, but now much cheaper. Clue number 3, the turning point. In quarter 4 of 2022, Palantir reported its very first positive EPS. EPS is earnings per share. Just 1 cent. A small number, but symbolically huge. For the first time, Palantir showed it could be profitable. And if you look closely, this was also when operating cash flows started to recover. In 2022, cash flows were down sharply year over year. In Q1, down 70%. In Q3, down 53%. But by Q4, the decline slowed to just 15%. And then things started improving. So while Wall Street was still skeptical, the actual numbers on the inside were starting to turn around. This is one of the first lessons of the playbook. Stocks often bottom out before the story turns positive. Investors give up, the price collapses, but the fundamentals quietly start improving. And if you spot that early on, you can get it before the crowd. Now, one thing that needs to be kept in mind is that when the stock is at the bottom, most often than not, the news, the headlines will be extremely negative. You might second guess yourself. You might start doubting whether or not this company is worth investing in. But so long as the fundamentals are starting to improve, even though the headlines are bad, they're extremely bad, there is a potential for a turnaround. And so, what turned Palantir from a beaten down stock into a rocket ship? One word: AI. In 2023, the world woke up to artificial intelligence. ChatGPT went viral. AI became the hottest theme in investing. And Palantir, they launched their AI platform AIP. Suddenly, this wasn't just a sleepy government contractor, it was an AI stock. The timing was perfect. Their revenues, which had slowed all the way down to 12% growth in early 2023, started accelerating again. Quarter after quarter, growth picked up. They crossed $1 billion in annual revenue for the first time. At the same time, profitability became consistent. No more maybe one quarter positive. Palantir started showing real earnings. Of course, these earnings were not massive, but you could see the real difference in free cash flows. Wall Street couldn't ignore it anymore. Analysts started upgrading the stock. Big funds started buying it. Palantir was added to major indexes. And all of this created a feedback loop. More visibility, more demand, higher prices. That's how you go from 13 billion in market cap to over 100 billion. And that's how you get 10x. Of course, today it's over 300 billion. So that's like a 30x. So what can we learn from this story? How do we take Palantir's journey and use it as a playbook to find the next Palantir? The first lesson for me is to look for a reset. Great companies often get too expensive during a hype cycle. Then they fall out of favor. The stock price collapses. That's the reset. For Palantir, price to sales went from about 37 when it had IPO'd to about 7. Now, that's the opportunity zone. Lesson number 2, watch the fundamentals, not the headlines. When everyone was negative, Palantir's free cash flow was still strong. Gross margins were still near 80%. And earnings quietly turned positive in Q4 of 2022, right before the stock bottomed. The clues were there if you looked. Lesson number 3, narratives drive the big move. Fundamentals get you in the door, but narratives push stocks 5x or 10x. For Palantir, it was AI. Without AI, the turnaround might have been slower. But attach a strong company to the hottest narrative and you get explosive upside. So the playbook is simple. Find companies that have reset in valuation, check if the fundamentals are quietly improving, and ask, is there a big narrative that could ignite it? That's the formula. And of course, Palantir isn't the only one. We've seen similar patterns with companies like Nvidia years ago, or AMD when it turned the table on Intel. Even Robinhood has gone through its own cycle of hype, crash, and quiet turnaround. The lesson isn't about Palantir specifically, it's about recognizing this cycle. Stocks go from hype to despair to rebirth. And if you can spot that inflection point when things quietly start turning positive, but the market hasn't noticed yet, that's where the real fortunes are made. Remember, the best opportunities often look uncomfortable. They don't look obvious. Like I mentioned, Palantir in late 2022 looked like a broken stock, but underneath, the playbook was playing out. And that's why we study these case studies so that we can recognize them next time. So that's the Palantir playbook. From hated to hero, from 13 billion to over 300 billion, from dead money to over 10x returns. Now, here's my question to you. Which stock today do you think is following a similar path? Which one looks beaten down on the outside, but has the pieces quietly coming together on the inside? Drop your thoughts in the comments because the best ideas often come from conversations like this. And if you'd like me to break down other case studies like Nvidia, AMD, or even some under the radar names, let me know below. Because the more playbooks we study, the better our chances of catching that next big winner before it explodes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.